Hello, folks. So, in this video, I wanted to talk about how logging is important, very important. Basically, you're trying to do monitoring, and you want to understand what is happening in your system, right? So, in my previous startup in Togay, I used to be the infrastructure engineer, the only guy. And I remember we having problems like, for example, we did have logs at the topmost level at the, for example, Nginx layer where all the traffic was coming in. It used to log basic details like the client, the agent, user agent, and then what was the response status code, what was the say request method, and then at the application level we had logs which were getting sent and all of these logs were getting sent to vector, right? And it was getting stored in vector in the form of files, but there was no way to query the logs say through some query language or just a text search and whatnot. We didn't have any sort of elastic search and all that on top of this indexing this log data and all. But the one problem we had was people didn't know what was the request that even came. The request body, the request headers, the response body, the response headers. At some point, one of my ideas, which I never implemented, sadly, was basically have a what do you say log. Yeah, you could say log or data or backup, or like not backup exactly, not the exact good term, but anyways, have a log of all the response bodies, headers, and of course the request bodies and headers. Similar to how you have logs, application level logs, have the logs of what requests came, what responses were sent, and this can be done centrally at the topmost level at the gateway layer. Say if you have Kong or Nginx or HA proxy, something, right, where all the traffic is coming in. You can just put it like a plugin, or I don't know, like in Kong there are plugins. You can it's a plugin architecture. You can actually put plugins for specific routes also, right? Specific services and whatnot. And so for I think previously they used to have this concept called APIs and all, but now it's services and routes, I believe. I think it reduces duplication and all. So anyways, duplication and configuration for Kong. Anyways, so you can just ensure that you have a plugin, say custom plugin, or there's already a plugin out there, just use that, and ensure that you have the request body and response body, request headers, response headers, so that you can actually debug, right? Because you want when you want to debug, you want as much data as possible, right? This is going to be a lot of data though, depending on how big your request bodies are and response bodies are. Maybe archive off or get rid of older data at some point, say after 2-3 days or after a week or something like that, right? It's going to be a lot of data, yes, but it will help you debug stuff, because people in Togay struggled a lot to actually reproduce issues when the customer said we are getting this problem, and we were like, what is the request though? And they were like, I don't know, I have to check it out. And then they tried to get back, but then if we had the data, we could have just found out at which time they sent the request. We could have asked, and then we could have found out the response codes, and we could have been like, if they are getting 401, which are the what are the 401s, and what are the response bodies of those, and what are the request bodies of corresponding to those, and whatnot, right? It could have been really cool. So it's important to do logging, and I think it's important to do logging of even request body, basically request data and response data. If you have a server, like server running, service running, right? If you have a client server architecture and a service running, a long running service running, which is catering to requests and giving responses, or if it's catering to requests and giving results, or even jobs running and whatnot, it's important to understand what was the request, or what was the input, and what was the output, complete input and output. So in this case, let's say it's an HTTP service, it could be HTTP 1 or even 2, say gRPC stuff and whatnot. What was the request body, request headers, and then the request method and all, and then request URL and all that, and then response headers, response body, response code, right? So log it all so that it will help you debug. This is assuming that the service only depends on the input and gives the output. Input and of course the database and stuff, and nothing. It's like a pure function, or else you're going to have other problems like environment specific stuff and whatnot, which is going to be harder to reproduce. That's why you always want pure functions, pure methods, which just take input and then give you an output. It doesn't depend on things like say time, global variables and whatnot. So anytime you give an input x, it gives an output y always. Same input x, the same input y, output y, right? So yeah, I just wanted to talk about this. Like it's important to have logs, and especially the input logs and output logs. Say request. In case of server-side architecture, in servers, it's request bodies and whatnot, and then response bodies and whatnot. And this developers can use to write tests and reproduce things in their local, especially using the request, the input, and compare it to the output response and whatnot. So yeah, that's all I had for this video. I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.